just for some historical content real quickly that's kind of interesting, not particularly relevant to anything. I was vice chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee for 4 years. I have learned more today about how legislation gets finalized when you and I can read it than I did. And we didn't have any contemptuous remarks. Nobody was offering to have a fist fight. It's a great thing to be here today. And I think they keep inviting me to do these programs because I got carried away in 1990 and decided, and that's not all that far back, but I decided to write an article about DVDs for the law office. And at the time, we had the State Bar through Compilation Commission, and I don't know who all, Gary O'Dowd was the primary contact with Mickey Company, but we had a competitor CD. It was only, at that time it was called a ROM, CD-ROM, and different from the DVD that we have today that have pictures and music and all that stuff. But anyway, I did that, and I stumbled across that the other day. It was published in the August 30, 1990 Bar Bulletin, and I'm probably the only person in Hobbs that still has the 1990 Bar Bulletin. Anyway, what did I do with my computer here? Let me find it real quick. Okay. I'm kind of the finish-up guy, and I get calls all the time because I guess partly because I used to write crazy articles, but secondly, some people think I know a little bit about computers and keep up, and I do know a little bit, and I keep up. But today, I was visiting with a young lady who was talking about her computers, and I asked her if she had changed to Windows 10, and the answer was no. Well, I understand through good sources that Microsoft has announced that they will discontinue Windows 7 support, Windows 8 support, and everybody will have to have Windows 10. Well, that's not a super big deal, but if your computer that you use normally doesn't have Windows 10, then you may have a big problem with a lot of things, everything you type plus what you do in research. So I'm here to tell you, this is a Dell computer. It has 1 terabit, which is a number higher than I can tell you. It's like 1,000 million or something. Elements of memory in it. It has a built-in DVD drive. When you subscribe to OneSource, you get 3 interesting sheets. The first sheet is in red. This is designed to get attorneys' attention. It says basically, to aid in faster searching, we allow for you to load the entire DVD databases onto your hard drive. So you can be as good as the guy that sits and looks at it in a regular computer, locked in his Carol at the office or whatever big law firms have people do anymore. We don't do that, but some people do. And you'll get as part of your subscription, and you might want to write this number down, it's so large, it's $62.50 a month. When you think about it, what's that, $3 a day for 20 working days? And I'm going to be talking about malpractice in just a minute, not because I blessedly have never been actively involved in such a thing, but Justice Chavez was kind enough not to mention that the guy who wrote that brief that got chewed up into little bits and made hopefully be reassembled somewhere, probably also got sued for malpractice. When you have that many blatant errors in your work product for your client, I mean, as far as I know, that's the automatic follow-through. One, you lose the case. Two, a lot of people want to go talk to a lawyer about malpractice. And I'm going to talk in a minute about the standards, and Brad's going to pull up a couple of cases. But anyway, remember that. You can load it on, so you can carry this, you can take it home at night, or whatever you want to do with it. You're not locked into your computer at the office. And it's the same content that you'll get online with OneSource, as I understand it. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, Brad, but I think it is the same. Keep that price in mind, because I'm going to be talking about the duty of an attorney to the client. And I'm talking in the context of the bad side of that equation, which is the suit for malpractice. And what are the elements of malpractice? How do they work? And if that doesn't give you trepidation, think about it again, because it should. New Mexico is one of the few states that actually requires attorneys to have malpractice insurance, which is a good thing for the public, but it's something that might come up in anybody's day-to-day practice. So I want to talk about that in a minute. But anyway, the other publication that you get when you subscribe to OneSource is for people like lawyers like me, and it is called it's a publication on how to do it, and I've got it in this stack somewhere, but I'm not getting to it real readily. But so don't feel that if you are not computer literate or comfortable, not necessarily literate, when you get the OneSource product, you will get a publication that is many pages thick and tells you basically how to use the product, how to install it on your computer, how to use it, and obviously you can call for technical support. Brad or somebody will talk. And there's the screen that comes up when you have those questions. And so, you know, anybody, I think anybody in this room certainly can handle that very easily, readily, and it's certainly available and at a very reasonable cost. Let me talk a minute now about malpractice in New Mexico. Brad, would you pull up 2014, 2015 cases? This is called a query. He's going to do a query for legal terms in all the information that's on OneSource. Legal malpractice. You don't have to put a capital malpractice, but that's okay. So, okay, just see what cases come up. And I have already written them down, so I'm going to talk about them very quickly and briefly here. Okay, one of the cases I've got is Potter versus Pierce. That's a 2015 case. And go down to, yeah, let's stay there. I think, let me see if that's the one I've highlighted real quickly here. Yeah, it is. Okay. Another one is Lucero versus Sutton, which is the 2014 case. You don't need to pull it up. That's how long it takes to do an appropriate beginning of a search to protect yourself when I talk about the duties of what you're supposed to do to preclude malpractice and to serve your client. That's why the client came to you. He wants legal services that will benefit his position, whether it's in litigation, making sure he's got title to the property he's about to spend a bunch of money for, whatever, you know, child support, child custody, guardianships, all those things, the duties are basically the same. The duty in New Mexico is to have the use of and be able to report and demonstrate that you have basically taken care of the duty that is throughout negligence. Legal malpractice is basically the same as professional medical malpractice, because it's the failure of the person involved who should be exercising the proper duty and exercising the appropriate care, that the duty to exercise the same expertness, if you will, and expertise of other lawyers or other doctors in that field. And in medical care, they get into local rules about, you know, Hollis may be different than Albuquerque or Santa Fe. But basically in the law, with this type of information immediately accessible, it doesn't really matter where you practice. You can be in any city, you can be in New York City and do this for New Mexico. So let me highlight this one case real quick. It's called First National Bank of Clovis. And is it up there? That's the 1985 decision that I think has the best. Yeah, you want to do that? It's First National Bank of Clovis versus Diane. And luckily, the Supreme Court did not cite the name of the attorney. The problem is Clovis is pretty small, so I don't know. And I don't know and don't want to know. But if you look at that case real quickly, So once again, that's how long it takes to find what I think is maybe the best case in New Mexico for legal malpractice definition. And it's old, which makes it good because it's never been overturned. And the standard is, and what happened there, a broker came in to talk to a lawyer and told the lawyer that I've got this, super neat program, and that happens fairly frequently, or activity that I'm going to be doing, and I'm going to make $1 million, and you're my attorney, and we're going to do great. And he apparently described what he was going to be doing as a broker in great detail. The malpractice suit, of course, came up when one of the people that was not happy with how the brokerage was going, if you will, or just not happy with the situation, or whatever causes people that want to file a malpractice claim, a malpractice claim was filed against the attorney for the broker. And understand, the attorney used the broker's information, which would be common. Turns out, and this is where my reference to the one source is, there was a specific statute that governed that type of brokerage in New Mexico, and the attorney didn't find it, maybe never checked, totally missed it. And when the client got stopped by the appropriate regulatory authorities from doing whatever the brokerage was, what was his next step? Any guesses? Find a lawyer who will handle a malpractice case against another lawyer. And I don't do that, by the way, for what it's worth. You get to pick and choose, and I don't choose to sue lawyers. But anyway, the case went up, and the ultimate ruling of the court was, in the context of the care and fulfilling the duty to the client that is inherent in the definition of malpractice in New Mexico. And these are my notes, so I'm not pretending to be totally accurate. We can find it in the case, but we don't really have time to do that. The court said, this was a Court of Appeals decision in 1985, and before I give you the ruling, Justice Chalmers was very nice a while ago, and we all appreciate that he didn't immediately go to malpractice and lay it on us. Didn't he mention it, as a matter of fact, and he deserves support for that, okay? Anyway, the court said, well, it's pretty simple. The attorney had a duty to warn the broker of potential civil liability, because the broker apparently got sued, for charging a commission in excess of that allowed by the statute. That simple. The duty was to, and the reason I like it in this type of discussion, what's more relevant and basic than reading a statute, or looking up to see, are there any statutes that relate to what it is your proposed client proposes to do? And make sure you tell him. John, that's a great plan, but New Mexico law says you can't charge more than 60% commission. The 100% you propose isn't going to work, and you might get prosecuted, you might get sued, and I'm telling you now, I'm warning you, because I have a duty to do that to you, and the attorney might get fired. Best thing that ever happened to him. He lost that client. So anyway, that's basically what malpractice is. My definition is it's determined as a question of whether or not the attorney exercised the requisite degree of competent and professional actions, whether or not it was advice. Because sometimes you give clients, you've opened the door and the horse has now passed the corral and they're ready to go, and you've told them it's okay. Whether the advice was so legally deficient when given that the client would have dire consequences and the attorney could be found to have failed to use the skill, prudence, and negligence that lawyers should have and display in their ordinary skills as attorneys. So I mention that not to, hopefully not to threaten anybody and not to cause anybody to ever have a malpractice claim, but I think that goes part and parcel with the obligation to, and I've heard more today and understand more than I've ever heard, about the officialness, if that's a word, of the New Mexico case law that comes through OneSource. And I've been on the advisory committee to the Compilation Commission, I guess, since I left the legislature in 1996 or whenever. But, you know, that's meaningful. You've heard great experts, and nobody's a more expert person than the Supreme Court Justice, tell us that this is official, it needs to be followed, and I've now told you how cheap it is. But I can't think of any, you know, and I know we all think, you know, and by the way, this computer is in the catalog today. Our computer store in Hobbs is called Staples. Our backup computer in Hobbs is called Walmart. But I do read the Staples brochures every week. This computer is $349. It's Windows 10, a terabit of information, and you have to trade in an old laptop. They give you $100 credit for that. If you don't do that, it'll be $449 instead of $349 because you didn't have a trade-in. I know most people I know have 2 or 3 laptops floating around that you could surely turn them over and they might send them to some country in Africa, which would be great for them. But anyway, I have practiced law in New Mexico now for 50 years, and I've seen a lot of things come and go. I've written articles that nobody understood at all. I no longer let my wife proofread my articles because she's better than I am on a computer, but not on the stuff I'll talk about. But anyway, what I'm hoping I've been able to communicate is that it's very simple to do it right, and that's the title of our program today. To do it right, economically, no great stress. It's all there, and you in my office, if I have a computer question, I ask my new associate who doesn't know that desktops exist. You know, he's a typical young associate. We have to have Lexus in our office because he's admitted in Texas. And so we have both. And so I can actually compare the two, and I think without any question, OneSource is far better if you practice in New Mexico. Don't necessarily think it works in Texas, but it works great over here. And I live 3 miles from Texas. So it's important in my office to have capability. But the same issue applies. If my New Mexico lawyer who's admitted in Texas doesn't look up Texas law and is giving advice based on his knowledge of New Mexico law, we may have big troubles in my law firm. So I'm very cognizant of this. Anyway, thanks to everybody for coming. I think I'm the last speaker. I don't know that I get to dismiss us, but you've been very attentive, and I do appreciate that because I've got to drive 400 miles home.